UN Chief Antonio Guterres said on Monday that he was appalled by reports of Palestinians killed and injured while seeking aid in Gaza. Here's UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric.
The Secretary General condemns the reported killings and injuries of Palestinians who were seeking aid in Gaza yesterday. It is unacceptable that Palestinians are risking their lives for food. The Secretary General calls for an immediate and independent investigation into these events and for perpetrators to be held accountable.
On Sunday, Palestinian and international officials said at least 31 people had been killed, and dozens more were wounded near an aid distribution site operated by the US-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
We've had a shooting at the GHF Aid Distribution Centre near Rafah.
British surgeon Victoria Rose said many of the injured were rushed to local hospitals, like the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis.
These are all gunshot wounds, and as you can see behind me, we've got all the bays are full, and they're all gunshot wounds. It's absolute carnage here, and there are even more people in the main emergency department.
Local health authorities said on Monday that several more Palestinians had been killed or wounded by Israeli fire near the same site. The Israeli military said it was aware of reports of casualties, and the incident was being thoroughly looked into. On Monday, the military said in a statement that troops operating overnight in Rafah had fired warning shots to prevent several suspects approaching them, adding the incident took place less than a mile away from the aid distribution site. It denied firing at people gathering to collect aid on Sunday. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a private group sponsored by the United States and endorsed by Israel, said there had been no fatalities or injuries at its distribution site or the surrounding area. It said Sunday's distribution was carried out without incident, describing reports of deaths as fabricated by Hamas. Reuters could not independently verify what took place. The reported deaths and injuries are the latest in a series of incidents, underscoring the volatile security situation that has complicated aid delivery to Gaza, following the easing last month of an almost 3-month Israeli blockade.
Hamas said on Saturday it was seeking amendments to a U.S.-backed proposal for a temporary ceasefire with Israel in Gaza. However, in a social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff rejected the Palestinian militant group's response as, quote, totally unacceptable, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Saturday that Hamas is continuing its refusal of the proposal, so it will continue its action in Gaza for the return of hostages and defeat of Hamas. The plan includes a 60-day truce and the exchange of 28 of the 58 hostages still held in Gaza for more than 1,200 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, along with the entry of humanitarian aid into the enclave. Hamas said it was willing to release 10 living hostages and hand over the bodies of 18 dead in exchange for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. But it reiterated demands for an end to the war and withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, conditions Israel has rejected. Israel has demanded the complete disarmament of the group and its dismantling as a military and governing force, along with the return of all 58 remaining hostages. Trump said on Friday he believed a ceasefire agreement was close after the latest proposals, and the White House said on Thursday that Israel had agreed to the terms. Also on Saturday, the Israeli military said it had killed Mohammed Sinwar, Hamas's Gaza chief, on May 13th, confirming what Netanyahu said earlier this week. Hamas has neither confirmed nor denied his death.
Britain will expand its nuclear-powered attack submarine fleet as part of a defence review. The review is designed to prepare the country to fight a modern war and counter the threat from Russia. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, like other European leaders, is racing to rebuild the UK's military capabilities. That's after Donald Trump told the continent it needed to take more responsibility for its own security.
We are investing £15 billion in our sovereign warhead programme to secure our deterrent for decades to come, creating 9,000 jobs and thousands more in supply chains across the country.
Monday's strategic defence review is to call for Britain's armed forces to move to a state of warfighting readiness and reverse its post-Cold War military decline. Starmer was speaking to workers at a BAE Systems shipbuilding site in Scotland.
When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready. To deliver peace through strength.
Despite cuts to the military budget in recent years, Britain still ranks alongside France as one of Europe's leading military powers. Its army helps to protect NATO's eastern flank, and its navy maintains a presence in the Indo-Pacific. But the army, with over 70,000 full-time trained soldiers, is the smallest since the Napoleonic era. Starmer has sought to cast the higher defence spending as a way to create jobs and wealth, as he juggles severely strained public finances and a slow-growing economy. The report, to be accepted by government, contains 62 recommendations. The announcement on new submarines helped lift the share prices of defence groups Babcock, BAE and Rolls-Royce.
경기가 너무 나빠졌어. 뭐 나만 그런 게 아니라 모든 사람이.
I hope the issues surrounding martial law are addressed more clearly and transparently.
경제가 좀 좋아졌으면 좋겠고. 두 번째, 우리 국민이 양극화.
From my perspective, there are still many things that don't make sense, and I'd like to see them properly resolved.
합쳐져 가지고 우리 대한민국 발전을 좀 할 수 있게끔 그랬으면 좋겠어요.
관세 때문에 영향을 많이 받고 있는데
Tariffs are having a huge impact on us, and with the leadership seat currently vacant, we're in an urgent situation, especially when it comes to things like nuclear plant exports and tariff negotiations. I hope the next president is someone who can provide clear direction and facilitate cooperation among ministries in these areas.
그런 부분을 빨리 좀 조절을 할 수 있었으면 좋겠어요.
Russia and Ukraine agreed to exchange more prisoners of war and return the bodies of 12,000 soldiers after peace talks in Istanbul on Monday. The warring sides met for barely an hour for only the second such round of negotiations since March 2022. But there was no breakthrough on a proposed ceasefire, which Ukraine, its European allies, and the US have urged Russia to accept. Russia says it wants a long-term settlement rather than a pause in the war. Ukraine says Russia does not want peace and that new sanctions are needed to force it to pursue a ceasefire. Following Monday's talks, Kremlin aide Vladimir Medinsky said Russian negotiators had handed their Ukrainian counterparts a detailed memorandum outlining Moscow's terms for a full ceasefire, and also suggested a short ceasefire to collect the bodies of dead soldiers. According to Russian media, Moscow said it would only agree to end the war if Ukraine gives up big new chunks of territory and accepts limits on the size of its army. Ukraine has repeatedly rejected the Russian conditions as tantamount to surrender. Later, Ukraine's defense minister Rustem Umerov provided some details on the negotiations.
Only during the discussion today, Russians handed over its document to our delegation. Our teams will take a week to review the documents, and then we can coordinate further steps. On release of prisoners of war, we agreed to focus on specific categories rather than numbers. We agreed to exchange all for all, seriously wounded and seriously sick prisoners of war. Second category is young soldiers who are from 18 to 25 years old, all for all. Also, we agreed to return 6,000 to 6,000 bodies of fallen soldiers. Children. We have provided the other side with a list of several hundred Ukrainian children who were deported to Russia.
Umerov said Ukraine also proposed more talks before the end of June, believing only a direct meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russia's Vladimir Putin can resolve the outstanding issues. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan hailed Monday's talks as a great meeting, and he expressed hope to bring together Putin and Zelensky for talks in Turkey that could also include U.S. President Donald Trump. Both Ukraine and Russia, for different reasons, are keen to keep Trump engaged in the peace process. Trump has said the United States is ready to walk away from its mediation efforts unless the two sides demonstrate progress towards a deal.
We'll be at the point next year where you can not only use a system to sort of automate some business processes or build these new products and services, but you can really say, I have this hugely important problem in my business. I will throw a ton of compute at it if you can solve it. And the models will be able to go figure out things that teams of people on their own can't do. I would bet next year that in some limited cases, at least, in some small ways, we start to see agents that can help us discover new knowledge or can figure out solutions to business problems that are kind of very non-trivial. Right now, it's very much in the category of, okay, if you've got some like repetitive cognitive work, we can automate it at a kind of a low level on a short time horizon. And so what an enterprise will be able to do, we talked about this a little bit, but just like give it your hardest problem. If you're a chip design company, say, go design me a better chip than I could have possibly had before. If you're a biotech company trying to cure some disease, say, just go work on this for me. Like, that's not
the race to sign sponsorship deals for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics is heating up. On Monday, Japanese auto giant Honda was the latest to say it had signed on the dotted line. It will be the official automotive partner for the Games and Team USA, providing a fleet of vehicles for athletes. Honda will also partner with the US team at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Italy. LA28 President Casey Wasserman hailed the deal at a news conference.
Honda's LA roots make this partnership even more meaningful as we work to deliver a Games that will make Angelenos proud.
With the deal, the LA Games has now passed $1.5 billion in total sponsorship agreements. That follows a flurry of deal-making in the first half of this year. Officials at LA28, the private non-profit company organising the Games, told Reuters they were confident of hitting a target of $2.5 billion. That would more than double the deals done for the Paris Olympics last year. But it wouldn't beat the $3 billion record set by Tokyo 2020. LA28 has announced a half-dozen deals so far this year. That includes making Archer Aviation its official air taxi provider and naming analytics firm Snowflake as its data partner. LA28 has a roughly $7 billion budget for the event. Besides domestic sponsorship deals like the one with Honda, it also gets money from the International Olympic Committee and its sponsors. Other revenue sources include ticket and merchandise sales. The 1984 LA Olympics turned a profit and became a model for future games. However, many subsequent host cities, including Sydney, Athens and Rio de Janeiro, blew way past their budgets.
Germany's manufacturing activity fell in May, but the sector saw a third straight monthly increase in output, driven by a continued rise in new export orders. According to a Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index survey released on Monday, May's reading was 48.3, slightly down from April's 48.4. A reading below 50 indicates contraction, marking the 35th consecutive month of sub-50 readings. Despite the overall PMI remaining in contraction territory, production volumes increased for the third month in a row. International sales grew at a modest pace, with stronger demand reported across Europe, as well as increased sales to the US, partly driven by stockpiling ahead of potential tariff increases. Employment continued to decline, although the rate of job shedding was the softest since January 2024. Business expectations rebounded in May, reaching the highest level since February 2022. They were buoyed by hopes of increased public sector spending and a potential trade agreement between the US and the EU.
Eurozone inflation eased below the European Central Bank's target last month. Official data showed Tuesday consumer price inflation in the 20 countries sharing the euro slowed to 1.9% in May from 2.2% a month earlier. The numbers supported expectations for another interest rate cut this week. That's despite global trade tensions driving longer-term price pressures. Data showed a fall in services price growth saw a closely watched reading on underlying inflation slow to 2.3%. That figure removes volatile fuel and food prices. The ECB has cut interest rates 7 times since last June. Another move on Thursday is almost fully priced in, given a number of factors pointing to easing inflation. It includes muted wage growth, easing energy prices, a strong euro and mild economic growth. Some investors think the ECB will pause with rate cuts after June and only make one more cut this year. But policy hawks have warned inflation could go back up soon, given unusually high geopolitical tensions. Dior will appoint Jonathan Anderson to head its womenwear designs and haute couture. The LVMH-owned label confirmed Monday he will take over from Maria Grazia Chiuri. It further widens his role at the fashion giant, where he's already its menswear designer. LVMH CEO Bernard Arnault called Anderson one of the greatest creative talents of his generation. The French fashion house named the 40-year-old as head of menswear designs in April. The award-winning Irish designer generated buzz around his previous role at Loewe. Fashion critics were impressed by his quirky designs that caught the attention at the Spanish label. The move comes with the sector currently struggling to recover from a prolonged slump. The luxury industry has been hit by China's property crisis and economic uncertainty in the US. Top luxury houses have bet on new design directions to help bring back shoppers.